today we're going to be talking a little bit about a recent trip that we've taken. Nowhere very exotic, but we have just returned from a week in Centre Parks, and it made us think actually when we were packing that whiskey and alcohol in general is a big part of our packing journey or routine. So we just thought we'd share that with you and see if you had any ideas or thoughts about what you do to prepare for your alcoholic beverages whilst you're away. So yeah, that's what we're talking through.
And in the news this week, it is mostly one that we want to share from our side actually. Massive news from us is that our Benrinnes, our gorgeous 9-year-old Pedro Jimenez sherry cask finished whiskey, single cask, single malt, actually got double gold at the San Francisco Spirits Competition. We tell you about medals relatively often because we're quite fortunate that we've scored now 20 awards since we started our journey through being whiskey producers. But this one is actually the most prestigious award that any whiskey can get globally. So we are chuffed to bits.
Really.
Quite surprised as well. But
that's it. When I got the email and it was, check at the bottom to see what you've won, and scrolling through all the information, and then to see double gold there, it was just
unreal.
Yeah.
Especially as we almost didn't enter it, did we? We entered it kind of thinking we weren't even going to be medalled because it's such a top draw comp.
Yeah.
But
well, it is hard for small businesses like us as well because it is costly, and the investment in the stock. Our casks, we don't produce a lot of bottles, so it can be quite a big dent in our stock, and then the cost of those. So it's when we do enter competitions, when we produce our whiskey anyway, it's always stuff that we really believe in, but for us it's got to be really important. And so now we've got to celebrate that.
Absolutely, and we haven't even had time to celebrate properly. We found out, and I was working some events like markets in the northwest, and straight off on holiday, and with the kids you can't really celebrate too boozy, can you? And then
you tried.
I did have a go, right? And also allegedly, and we find out in a couple of weeks if we actually get a real medal.
I know, that's one of the things that whenever we win awards, I was like, let's see the trophy. And very rare these days that we get the trophy.
It's normally a PDF or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Here's
brilliant.
your print at home certificate.
Thanks for that, lads. Yeah, put a lot of graft into that. Thank you. But so happy days with that. And we just wanted to share that news with you guys. And so on to our main topic of discussion, which is travelling with whiskey or booze in general. We've, as Kirsty said earlier, we've been in Centre Parks for the last few days, doing all kinds of lovely outdoor activities with the kids, not looking at Zoom, which is amazing for me especially. And then we kind of thought when we're out there, or you thought more than me, that there is actually a whole routine, isn't it, around packing for a holiday when it involves booze and what you're going to actually consume.
And it's become part of our normal life now, isn't it? People often laugh when we turn up to places and we're prepared for our stay with our alcohol, and but for us it's really important, isn't it? You've spent all this money on a holiday and you want this time away, and you trying to make it the best you can, so you prepare it with all your clothes and everything else. And so why isn't alcohol part of your packing routine?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always taken either miniatures or 20cl bottles with me on the holiday anyway, because I could never trust wherever I was going to have a good enough bar, frankly, and it wasn't just going to serve generic stuff. And so I've always kind of done that. And nowadays I have that gorgeous wooden crate. It's like an old, I don't know, like ship crate type thing with wood with rope handles on it. Perfect size actually for samples roughly these sizes, to just rack them up and clear some space on the desk as well, to be really honest, of all the samples that accumulate. And then on the gin front, we do spend quite a lot of time, don't we, just staring at the gin shelf, working out which one we're going to take with us and that probably won't come home again.
Well, that's the thing as well. It can't be too beautiful a bottle either, because I like to be able to leave the bottle behind.
Yes.
Don't want to carry excess packaging home.
No.
So we always have to factor that in as well, because we don't want to keep the bottle afterwards.
Yeah, and also if there's space in the car, choose a few which have low fill levels, don't we? Just so that you've got a few things cleared out, so that it justifies buying and opening more.
And there's also that panic of when you get there, when we're unpacking or whatever, especially before we had children, first thing we do is want to have a drink, and it's like, I didn't want to go down to the bar straight away or whatever, so open the whiskies or the gin straight away and chill out, really. That's when the holiday starts.
Yeah.
I mean, before this, the holiday really started when we were travelling going through duty free.
Yes.
That was a big part of our going away ritual.
Yeah, and all those what's it called, caviar prunier places at the airport, so nice champagne and assorted smoked fish, kind of kickstart to any holiday, wasn't it?
But we'd always go and seek out the travel retail exclusive, didn't we, and see what we could try. We'd always have to factor in extra time at the airport beforehand. The
photos of the bottles as well.
Yeah.
It's even wherever I go, even if I'm going down to London for an overnight meeting, I take a bottle just in case. You don't want to be left dry either if a bar shuts early or they've just got a rubbish selection, do you?
And obviously we encourage drinking responsibly throughout all of this.
It's a given.
As we holiday with 2 young children.
Yes, and a crate of miniature booze, but but it's one of those things, isn't it? Because you kind of, like in what we do, so many samples kind of cross our desks and kind of just accumulate everywhere in the office. It's a useful way of clearing through a few of them without having to actually take a full bottle. You just take all the samples you can see. Helpful times. So let us know in the comments or across social media or whatever how you travel with booze, if there's any particular kind of ritual that you have either in packing or consuming, or if you only take a certain bottle with you at any given time. We'd be fascinated to learn more.
And now another question that we regularly get asked on virtual tastings from our customers at markets, and that is blended Scotch, single malt, single cask. What do those terms mean? What are the differences? What should we be looking for, and what should be my favourites? Which I always find quite interesting because to me your favourite is whatever you've tried and you like. But somehow these terms make people think that automatically they should like a whiskey more than others, and that's not really the case. For me, it's all about your favourites. But in terms of what those actual terms mean,
yeah, let's go for it. So there are 3 very different things. The blended Scotch is a blend of malt whiskies and grain whiskies, all aged at least 3 years. In cask, has to be an oak cask by law, and then they can be blended together. So from multiple distilleries, grain, malt, different vintages, different cask types, blended together. And the classic brands there would be like Dewar's, but also Chivas, Ballantine's, Grant's as well, Teachers, and having a look around the office to see what other blends that I can remember. Some of the fantastic Compass Box releases as well are blends. So amazing brands sit within the blended Scotch world, and actually accounts for about 91.4% of all Scotch whisky consumed globally. The biggest one being, the only one I probably haven't mentioned, Johnny Walker. Johnny Black being the most consumed whisky on the planet. And yeah, it's an incredible category, one that I think a lot of people overlook erroneously, because without blends we wouldn't have Scotch whisky, and that's a fundamental
and that's
truth.
what I mean about people asking about their favourites. It's, I don't like blends, but actually you try some. They're really, really good.
There are some incredible blends out there, and the blends are the ones that are actually pushing real innovation at the minute as well. When you think of Dewar's with their recent cask finishes from Illegal Smooth, the Mezcal, also some of their other pioneering stuff that's coming through, like quadruple or double aging. Then you look at Chivas, who had the first tequila cask finish blend for their 13-year-old, I think it was, last year. May not have tasted the most amazing thing ever created, but it's innovation and it was interesting, and I'm sure there'll be another release of that imminently. And then all of the blenders are actually the ones that are the fascinating brand stories. As well as people pin their kind of love of distilleries and single malts, which we'll get onto in a bit, on a distillery like the Talisker Distillery or the Teeling Distillery over in Ireland, or the Bruichladdich Distillery, which we hear about all the time, or Lefroy or Aberfeldy or Cragganmore or Fettercairn. Whilst people do that, that's because really you have a point of reference, or a single point of provenance as well. You can see the stills in an image. You can go and visit, in normal times, the distillery itself, try some amazing stuff, walk around, feel the heat, smell it, kind of get that lovely feel that you get from a distillery, right? Whereas with blends, you don't normally get that. So they normally have what's called brand homes, which are like kind of located in experiences within distillery experiences. So for Johnny Walker, that's at the Cardew Distillery. For let's see, Dewars, that's at the Aberfeldy Distillery, of course, one of the absolute best distillery experiences there is. For Chivas, the Strathisla Distillery. Wow, what a beautiful place to visit. And they have their own blending room where you as a punter can go around and blend your own Chivas blend. It's fantastic, beautifully and quite thoughtfully designed as well, I must add.
And they've done really well at rolling that out across the country as well.
Yeah.
In Manchester, they had the blending
in the loft, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it's really tastefully done and such a good experience.
Absolutely. Then you move on to single malts. So single malts, as I said, that's where you get that kind of heartland brand love normally from a distillery. I love Longmorn whiskey, or I love Benriach Distillery, or the Dalmore, etc. Fine, but single malts are still blends, but they're blends from one distillery with no grain in there. And when you tell people, that normally upsets them, especially when we do our outdoor events, like at markets and that. You get the odd person, and you always kind of, you feel it when they're coming up to you, don't they? When you're interested in whiskey, you want to try ours. We'll start with our blend. It's the most approachable flavour profile. Oh, I don't drink blends. I only drink singles. And like, let me tell you a story, son. And then you explain it, that they are also blends. You can almost see them behind the eyes going, God damn, I'll never feel the same again. It's like, I'm glad you dissed my product. I'll ruin your afternoon. And so single malts are incredible. Think of like the Lefroy Distillery, and you can go and experience the true history of over 200 years of distilling. And even the modern ones like Teeling over in Ireland, which is incredible. Or even the kind of ones you can't visit, like Glenbergie or Dalmunich. They're insanely amazing distilleries, but you have to vicariously live them through press or bloggers or Google Images. But they're lovely distilleries, so technologically advanced, it's unbelievable. But they create single malt. Most of their malt goes into blended Scotch as top dressing, which we call it. So blends typically will have about 75-80% grain whiskey, and then the rest will be topped up with malt whiskey as top dressing to give it that kind of character, the flavour, the mouthfeel, that kind of thing. But then you graduate into single cask. The single cask is really, in my view, at the top of that pyramid. Because it is still single malt, because it's from one distillery. That's what the single means. But it's one cask from one distillery capturing a moment in time and that quintessential flavour profile of that distillery. And that's kind of what we specialise in, is that kind of top triangle in the pyramid. We absolutely love hunting for those amazing casks. Right?
Yeah, that's it. And for me, I always speak to people about when we select our single casks. It is so special because no two casks are the same. Even though they've sat beside each other in a distillery and were filled on the same day, we've often had cask tastings where they don't taste totally different, because obviously the distillery flavour profile and character goes into the same. But how it's taken to the wood, it can really vary, and that for me is what makes it really special, because that cannot be repeated. No matter how many times you do the same process again, it still could be different. Like 100%. You just never know what could be different in it when after the cask has been filled. So, do
you remember those 3 casks we tried at the Lefroy Distillery in 2014? Actually,
yes.
When they had been in that warehouse one, their entire maturation, and it was part of the Water to Whiskey tour, which is phenomenal. If they still do that, do it. It is insane. It feels expensive when you're booking it, 82 quid when we did it, something like that. But it's a whole day of Lefroy, and you get to drink that 82 quid back. Yeah. But you also get
and eat it. It was an amazing picnic.
And lunch, yeah. Although having the dip of the brown water sauce water while seeing the sheep that have just done their business in it wasn't the most ideal experience. But it was one that completed the circle, right? But then at the end of it, you got to walk into Warehouse 1, where Prince Charles cask is laying as well. And you got to try, or you got to draw, didn't you? Draw the samples from 3 different casks that had been maturing next to each other. But all 3, same shape, same size, same age, same everything, wildly different flavour profiles. And so we all got to try them. And then our favourite, you got to bottle into a 20cl gift bottle to take back. We still have those, by the way. I was dusting them the other day whilst reorganising.
You were dusting them?
Bottles are the only thing I dust. And annoyingly, I haven't got around to doing the bar, but I did update the the cage with all the fun stuff in. And so they did actually get cheeky dust. Yeah. So they're the three main types. You also have blended malt, which is where you blend single malts together effectively from different distilleries. And then you also have single grain as well, where it is grain whiskey from grain distilleries even, that don't really get talked about all that often, but it's normally a lot more smooth in flavour profile and character, got that lovely kind of vanilla sweetness to it. We love single grain, and by the time this goes live, we'll have just launched our new Strathclyde 15-year-old. Happy days! So yeah, look out for that. I think that answered it.
Yeah.
That answered it, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Awesome.
And one of the questions that we get asked quite a lot as well is all about casks. You know, its influence in the whiskey. Why is bourbon casks so widely used in the whiskey industry? And so we thought we'd answer that for you today.
Yeah, and it's a great question. And as Kirsty said, we get asked face to face, Zoom to Zoom, whatever the term is on that. And
virtually,
we'll keep it that. It's always one that we get asked because, you know, sherry casks, the releases that are matured in sherry casks are typically more expensive. People don't necessarily know why. And then all different things like Madeira, Moscatel, Fino sherry, all that kind of stuff. There's so many different types of casks nowadays, and red wine casks especially, beer seasoned casks, all sorts. But to answer the main question there of the bourbon casks, they're the most prominent in the industry, and roughly it's about 85, maybe 90% of all Scotch whiskies matured in ex-bourbon casks. Because it always gives a base flavour that is consistent, really easy to make sure that you've got a solid base, those gorgeous vanilla and oak notes just always come through, and then slight variation depending on the type of oak, if it's American oak or European oak, of course, and the different spirit that was in there before, be it ex-rye, ex-bourbon, ex-whatever. But in those kind of different styles within those categories. But then also, out of all the casks, they're the cheapest. Because from American whiskey's standpoint, you cannot use a cask for bourbon production twice. You can only ever use it once. And because of that, there's a massive surplus of casks whenever they're producing their next run. So the canny Scots called up America and said, hey America, it's Scotland, can we have your ex-bourbon casks please, for maturing our whiskey? And it just kind of works. And also they're the cheapest because they are mostly available. So in terms of cost, you're looking at about 220 quid ex-VAT for an ex-bourbon cask, whereas a sherry cask, be it a hogshead, which is 250 litres-ish, or the sherry butt at about 500 litres, you're looking at over £1,000, over £1,000 for those casks. So there's a massive difference there, which obviously gets factored in. Like when we're doing releases, it's a massive deal for us if we spend an extra £1,000 just on the wood, but it works, and that's why we do it for releases such as our Craig Ellicky, for example, back at the beginning, or our new double gold award winning San Francisco Spirits Competition, Benrinnes, that we wanted to invest in the whiskey to do it justice and get the best we could out of it, and it works. You then have all these different types of casks. They all impart different flavours, but bourbon's the most prominent, followed by Oloroso sherry, and then you get the more niche sherry casks like PX, Pedro Jimenez, the sweet sherry cask, or even Fino and Paolo Cortado as well. And rum casks are being used more and more. I'd love to get my hands on a rum cask, but they're not that available for small producers. No. You have to own a rum distillery, seemingly, to get them. One day though, eh?
No, we will never own a rum distillery.
No, get the cask. We'll call up someone in I don't know, like Jamaica or somewhere, and get them to send over one. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it?
Oh, we could have got one when we nearly went to Barbados.
Ah, yeah.
And COVID.
All those air miles we then got sent back.
All about planning our alcohol for our travel that we missed out on.
I know. Well, that would have been full bottles, though, not necessarily the miniatures.
We can dream.
Indeed. Brilliant. If there's any more questions, please do send them through. We'll endeavour to answer at least one every single episode.
And now it's time for Whiskey of the Week. And this is where we each choose one bottle that we've been enjoying over the last few days. And for me, I'll go first. Do you want me to go first? I can go first. For me, it is a rather tall bottle, so I'm going to have to hold it really far back. But it is the latest Bimber. Oh, what? The camera's not picking that up good enough at all. I'll read it instead. The latest Bimber Batch 4 of their London single malt London whiskey. Small batch Oloroso cask, finished in Spanish Oloroso sherry butt. Mm-hmm. Only 975 bottles, 51.2 ABV. And this, I have to say, I was rather smug. I still am, actually, even just holding it, rather smug, because I don't think anyone opens their Bimbers.
They're so hard to come by.
They're like the Ardbeg of English whiskey, I describe them as, where everyone buys all the committee releases from Ardbeg, and within nanoseconds they're on the next auction. And Bimber's basically the same, isn't it? Whereas I have a very different philosophy on whiskey. If I can get it, I would open that bloody thing and drink it. And so I've wanted to have some Bimber in the collection for a long time. And they're actually similar to I think I'd say Ardbeg honed one of these abilities that I've picked up in the whiskey industry, and Bimber's kind of perfected it, of the speed that I can refresh a website until a whiskey becomes available. Literally with those two fingers, just Command R constantly. Until it's available, and then click, let's go. And I was very fortunate to be able to pick up one bottle of that and one bottle of their port cask when they released a couple of months ago. And then you have the nervous wait to see if you actually got the thing.
Can we try it?
Okay, fine. So it's from London, my hometown. Everything of Bimber that I've tried, I've absolutely loved to bits. And this one on the nose is marginally more floral than I would normally go for, I have to say. But it still has that gorgeous kind of sweetness to it, and a very approachable flavour profile for 51.2, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice sweetness, almost burnt sugar, like creme brulee.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous sign when you ask for a second sip of a limited edition. I'm going to have to hide it, aren't I?
That is really, really good.
Oh, God, where am I going to hide that? I'm going to have to find some movable floor
It is that
panel.
sweetness, that burnt sugar, the like almost toffee apple. Because you do get them that fresh sweetness at the end, but with the lovely caramelised note to begin with.
I genuinely think it's one of the best whiskies released this year.
So it's really thick as well, isn't it?
It's a big one.
For 51% as well, that's quite dangerous. It's very drinkable for such high ABV.
And then you also get those deep dark fruits, but they're more subtle, aren't they? I'd hazard a guess it was a second fill Oloroso butt that they finished it in.
Even by the colour.
Hasn't got.
Well, it's quite.
It's got some.
Yes.
Not as deep as it probably could be if it was a first fill. Actually, put it up to there. It is. That's a first fill sherry cask. So one of ours, the Benrinnes, you can't even really see the light through that in comparison. So I'm guessing it's second, but I have to say it's still a potent second. Genuinely upset that I was only allowed on their website to buy one of each. I really am going to hide that. So what's your whiskey of the week then, Kirst?
My whiskey of the week is the Hibiki Harmony. This is real Japanese blended whiskey. For me, I've fallen in love with this one. It's a real, well-balanced, it does exactly what it's called, to be honest, Japanese Harmony. Really smooth, it's got that lovely sweetness to it. And a character that I'm not usually as great at pulling out is the citrus notes, but in this I really feel like they come to the front, and it's just delicious.
The brand obviously made famous in that Lost in Translation film, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
in 2008. Bill Murray, absolute classic. Although that was the 17-year-old, released while I was in Japan for the first time.
Well, while you're talking about that, the bottle is absolutely beautiful. It's real drinks table worthy. The bottle itself represents the seasons in Japan, but for me, it just makes it look so beautiful, so decadent, and it definitely is a countertop worthy.
I doubt many
bottle.
of them get recycled.
Well, that's it. Although we haven't got one on our bar yet.
I've got an empty one down there.
I was going to say, it's because we haven't got an empty one. So in our kitchen, we've got a shelf of all the beautiful bottles that we want to keep. And I've been looking after one of those looking for one for ages, but we'd never finished a bottle to put it up there.
Oh, I did you a favour last week.
Thank you. That's so kind.
Made it happen. Absolutely. It's a stunning one, isn't it? I mean, as a range as well, it's beautiful. I was very fortunate when I was last in Japan 2 years ago. I got to go to the Hakushu distillery, and at the end, they have a cash bar where you can try all kinds of Japanese whiskies that you can't try anywhere else in the world, like not released anywhere. Yeah. And so everyone else on my tour, I was the only non-domestic tourist, which was quite strange. And at every point during the tour, they gave me these earphones to listen to what they were saying in English. But the guide clearly wasn't totally comfortable with me being there. And it wasn't a GreatDrams thing, it was just a tourist thing because I was over there at work. And it just kept shouting over to me, "Hey, white man, are you okay?" Like, yeah, got this. I kind of know that. I know this bit. This is happy times. Happy times. I'm in a very happy place. But yeah, the bar at the end, everyone else on the tour came back with a tray that had one highball on it, so whiskey, soda, and one whiskey to try. I came back with a tray of one highball, about 10 whiskies, and a barman holding my second tray of whiskies. Because I was like, there's not a chance I'm coming here and not trying everything on this list. I genuinely spent every single yen I took to Japan on that one bar tab. It was brilliant. Brilliant. But the point being that most of them were actually the component parts of the 17-year-old Hibiki. So the Mizunara, the bourbon, and the sherry cask components. Phenomenal stuff. Great product, great whiskey, great brand.
Great
Excellent.
bottle.
Really great drams. There it is. Awesome. Well, they were our whiskies of the week, and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any thoughts about the two whiskies we went through, do leave them in the comments. As always, do feel free to subscribe, to forward this on to people, to review, all that kind of stuff. And we'll be at more events this weekend.
We will.
And make sure you do drop us a message if you're making a dedicated trip, because we know quite a few of you do actually, which is very, very kind, and we do appreciate that. Just in case plans have changed or COVID has meant that one event's cancelled and another one's popped up somewhere, as does happen. So just get in touch, let us know, and we'll do our best to give you the most updated advice and response as we can. Awesome. Cheers then, and until next time.